Greetings and welcome to our series of weekly devotionals. We've reached the midweek portion this week of our look at some verses in Psalm 90. I've been watching this show on Netflix in which the main character, has spent 5 years on a deserted island by himself. And then he's finally rescued and sort of reintegrates back into society. And he tells one of the other characters in an early episode of the show that on the island, days just blurred one into the other. That every day, after a while, was the same. Every day was drudgery, which sounds pretty awful. And I was reminded of that reading the opening verse of this lectionary reading, where the psalmist writes, "So teach us to count our days, that we may gain a wise heart." A wise heart gained by counting our days. Counting our days sounds boring and monotonous and drudgery and, well, god-awful. You may have heard a famous poem. It's often read at funerals. It's called The Dash, and I'm going to read just a part of it. It begins by saying, "I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end." And of course, there's a dash between that beginning date and that ending date. And the poem speaks of the ways in which we have spent that time, the dash between the beginning and the end. And the poem ends, "So when your eulogy is being read with your life's actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about you and how you lived your dash?" That poem reflects on the reality that it's not so much about counting your days, but making your days count. And in fact, the great reformer Martin Luther translated this particular verse in this particular psalm that way, that a wise heart is gained by making your days count. And I think, reflecting again on God's time as opposed to our time, doing those things that we find meaningful and purposeful, whatever those things might be for us. I remember the famous basketball coach Jim Valvano giving a famous speech many years ago called "Don't Give Up." It was a speech he gave as he was dying of cancer. And he spoke in that speech, I still remember, he said, "What is a good day to me? To me, if I can smile, if I can laugh, if I can cry, and if I can think deeply about something, that's a full day. Laugh, cry, and think deeply." I always remember those words. It seems like good advice to share with one another feelings, to laugh at life, to think seriously about things, to live in God's time, to live with gratitude and patience and humility and generosity. Those kinds of things, I think, help us indeed to not just count our days, but to make our days count. And as I'm also fond of saying, it's not how many days in our life that matter, it's how much life is in our days. Amen.